Welcome back to another episode of the Pig Roach Files. This week on the Pig Roach Files, coming to you from the DIA control room, we went back in time to 2014 for a very special story that I think a lot of people need to hear right now. And that is the life of the Pig Roach. DSP was doing his Hate Live podcast at the time, before he got over it and doesn't do it again. He went ahead and had a decent chunk of his podcast, about 40 some odd minutes, where he talked about filler, games, things like that. And then he went on break in this video you're about to see. And then we got some gold dust. We get the story of Phil Burnell, DarksydePhil, DSP, the Pig Roach, the King of Gout. He gives us his story, and what you're about to see is his own words, him coming to life, being born, and it's exceptional, apparently. During a blizzard, somehow, in the early weeks of April, way back in the mid-80s, DSP was spawned.
Alright everyone, welcome back to, I can't even remember the name of the show, Hate Live. That's pretty bad. Welcome back to Joe's Adventures. What? I don't know. So yeah, segment 2, back in the day. What I'm going to do is give you guys an abridged, and I mean really abridged version of my life here in Connecticut. The things that I've done for work, for school, for enjoyment, and kind of just run through a history of my life from start to finish, because now I really do feel that this move to Washington is the beginning of the next major chapter in my life. So I was born in April of 1982, and I was born in the middle of a blizzard. I kid you not. It was the first week of April, and there was an effing blizzard to the point where my dad couldn't even get to the hospital in time to see my birth in person. He was there, got there a little bit late because there was so much snow. There was no physical way he could get there to be there in time. I guess my mom had been at the hospital for several days, and so my dad wasn't there the whole time. He'd been working and then going back, etc., etc. But yeah, born in a snowstorm, so you knew that was going to be something special, right?
As you heard, there was a rather exceptional story to how Mr. Pig Roach came into existence. Something he claimed that was special somehow. And now we're getting into early childhood, where he talks about growing up in his neighborhood, which he states that it wasn't such a bad place before, especially when he was really little. And we also get to hear about his love of action figures.
And I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. At that point, I hate to say it, at that point it was a great neighborhood. Lots of friendly people of all kinds of cultures, of all kinds of nationalities and ethnic backgrounds. Although there were a lot of people that were Italian and Polish, but there were also, African Americans, there were Hispanics. There was a lot of variety of the people who lived around my neighborhood. And I remember growing up, when I was a small child, I was a huge fan of action figures. If you could get me G.I. Joe, He-Man, Transformers, any of that stuff, I was in love with it. And then I remember the first major fad in my life was when I saw the Ghostbusters movie.
A quick timeout before we continue watching this train wreck. I want you to keep in mind that his body movements and his functions are still the same to this day. This video was in 2014, and he claims he's changed over the years. The man is still burping as he talks. He snorts every sentence, and he rocks back and forth uncontrollably.
Which I saw after it was new. I saw it, on television or whatever, and I freaking loved it. I fell in love with it. I would sit there and watch the damn movie on loop, sometimes 2-3 times in a day during, the summer. And it was pretty crazy that I would go on these crazy, trends, and that was one of them. Ghostbusters, and of course, the Ghostbuster cartoon came on TV, Ghostbusters action figures, and I was all over the Ghostbusters. I even remember saying, I hope one day they make a Ghostbusters 2, and then finally they did, and it was the best thing ever when I started seeing the previews for Ghostbusters 2. I had local friends in the neighborhood. My next door neighbor's name was Ned. He was a little bit younger than me, a few years younger than me. 1 or 2 houses over, there was a kid named Raymond, and he was a real close friend of mine. He would come over all the time. We would play video games. We would play action figures. We would do all kinds of stuff together. There were other neighborhood kids as well that would come by every once in a while to play stuff, but it wasn't. It was usually that was the core group, the 3 of us. And as you grow up, start going to school.
I don't know why he has to explain his grade school years to us, and why he told us his friends from his early childhood. He said their names. He said what they did together. But that was about it. I don't think he's going to elaborate into his friendship with them. Mostly because, well, as we know now, he can't keep friends.
My first school was St. Ambrose School in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It doesn't exist anymore. It closed down. And I started there in kindergarten, which when I was 5 years old. And I actually went there all the way through 8th grade. So you're talking 5 years old all the way up to, what is that? 14? 15? I think it's 15, right? 15 years old, 14 or 15. So that's a good chunk of my life. That was a good, 8 years, if not more, that I went to this school. It's a big run, right?
I don't know how going to school is crazy. How does he try to explain that his grade school years were exceptionally special because he went there for 8 years? Sounds the thing about being somewhere, doing something for 8 years is a long time, and it's special. Maybe that's why he thinks that his 10-year, almost 11-year legacy here on YouTube is exceptional as well.
What other things can you say that you actually did for your life for 8 years? Pretty crazy. And so, yeah, I went to St. Ambrose School. It's a Catholic school, which was weird. I mean, my parents were trying to raise me Catholic, but I only knew the basics about, Jesus or whoever. It was really when I started going to this school and they started teaching you the religious portions and you start getting into the dogmas and the doctrines and the Old Testament and the New Testament and the old God and the new God that's nice and forgiving and the Son of God and the Holy Trinity and the sacraments. Oh God, the sacraments. How I had to do all that stuff, and it was first, getting Holy Communion was the most important thing on the planet. I remember when I did it, and man.
Religion is a good foundation for a family. I grew up with it. I knew friends who grew up with it. However, we never really practiced too much. My mom took us to church on Easter. Now, I remember it fondly because she used to slip us sweet tarts during the service. The little bunny-shaped ones. It was fun. As I grew older, I stepped out of organized religion. Yet, I respect those who value it. Because sometimes that's all you need to go ahead and get through a rough day. And I get it. And that's fine. I believe people should be able to practice whatever they want as long as it doesn't end up harming somebody else. So why does Pig Roach the Clown here, when talking about his family's religion at the time, decided to flail around and act like a clown? That's pretty offensive to some people. It's like he was mocking the religion for its beliefs and its practices. Now he's stating this was coming to... He was going to actually end up having some kind of epiphany when it came to organized religion at 16. Come on, the only thing I was thinking about when I was 16 was how to chase girls. It was how I wasn't going to be the dorky dude in the lunchroom. But that ended up happening, and I have some great friends because of it. So let's hear the Pig Roach's mystical epiphany about religion.
It was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. Doing all that stuff. And then finally, when I graduated from St. Ambrose School, started to become a little bit more independent-minded, started to think a little bit more about, when I go to church, what is it that I'm really doing, right? You know, I'm sitting here on a Sunday. I just remember. I remember this one particular Sunday. I'm sitting there at church, and everyone's, they're singing, and they're saying their prayers, and blah, blah. Half the people, I swear, are falling asleep. Half the people are falling asleep in church, literally. They just don't give a shit. They're only there to go through the motions. The other half are, like, so into it or whatever, and I'm like, if you really cared about people, wouldn't you be, like, doing something right now? Like, instead of sitting in church, all kind of, like, reciting at the same time like a cult, why don't you go work in a soup kitchen on Sunday and help people? You know? And I just remember that striking me. I was like, why am I here? You know? Like, I could be doing so many...
A lot of your fans should be asking the same question. Why am I here? When they sit in your chat. You constantly police it. You get that lean in manual ban going, which you're trying to go ahead and meme up a bit. Oh, look at me, lean in, manual ban. Oh, here comes a lean in ban. I don't know how you're trying to make it funny. It's not working. It just seems very petty that you are getting a little rattled because people are calling you out for leaning in and banning people for trying to have a voice in your chat.
You know? Like, I could be doing so many better things with my life than sitting in a church and chanting this thing in unison, you know? And that was kind of like the dawn of like independent thought for me, you know, where my whole life I had been raised by my parents and their dogmas and doctrines and then the Catholic Church and all that. And there was just this epiphany that happened to me that there may be better things in my life that I could figure out for my own rather than just listening to what everyone told me, right? And I started becoming a rebellious youth. I'll be honest. I started becoming a rebellious youth. And so I'd say probably about midway through high school.
Catholic school. Okay. So that was his high school. The one where he was a valedictorian at. Well, it seems like his high school really actually just goes ahead and gets kids ready for a sports scholarship. You know, it's a private school. You pay your dues and you go and have your kid go there and become a sports superstar. It happened in the area where I'm from. It happens in bigger cities all the time. But you didn't go there for sports. You're not very good at sports, Mr. Pig Roach. I watched your baseball stream, your MLB 19. I don't even think you understand how baseball's played. And your silly little thing saying about how it's a, you know, rural kind of area sport. Yeah, it's a bunch of teams in pretty much every big city across the U.S. has a team. Oh, and into Canada too. Don't forget about those Blue Jays. You have a baseball team right next door to you in the Seattle Mariners, which you could talk about on your stream. Maybe do a little homework. Talk about, you know, King Griffey and King Griffey Jr. smashing home runs back-to-back together as father and son. But you don't have any initiative. Unlike me. Unlike GTG. Unlike Mighty D. Unlike the Almighty One, David Davison. You just want things handed to you. Like a Wolverine action figure.
I started to, how can I explain? I started to just kind of like almost rebel. Meaning, why am I doing everything that I've been told my whole life? In high school, by the way, I went to another Catholic school course. This is all my parents' idea. Another Catholic school, Notre Dame Catholic school in Fairfield, Connecticut. Completely, you know, them doing shit and telling me what to do with my life. And I just basically remember going to this school, and the first 2 years of going to this school, I busted my ass, okay? I bent over backwards. I worked my ass to the bone to have straight A's. Because my parents had convinced me, if you do that, you're gonna go to a great college, you're gonna get scholarships, you're gonna go places, and you could be an important rich person one day. 2 years of getting straight A's, okay? I said, why am I doing all this fucking work? I really get the feeling that this is not gonna pay off. I should be enjoying my high school years, not literally working every fucking moment. So I did that. Junior year, my whole mentality changed. And even though I continued to still get good grades, maybe it wasn't straight A's, right? Yeah, it's okay to let your kid have a B every once in a while. I mean, stickler fucking parents. And I started hanging out with my friends more. I started doing more things that were, you know, things that youthful teenagers do versus just study all fucking day. And I still remember, and it was funny because it all became true, of course, when I finally graduated from high school in the year 2000. I was the valedictorian. A lot of people won't believe me. I was the valedictorian of my high school. Regardless of the fact that I wasn't like a super nerdy type or anything, I had ended up being the highest ranked in my school. And I didn't get accepted to any of the high-toity colleges, which if you're supposed to be the smartest person that you should get into, right? Yale rejected me. Harvard rejected me. There were 3 of them. I can't even remember what the third one was. But every Ivy League school that I applied to said, no. When you want to know why they rejected me, it's this simple. Because I'm a white male. because I don't belong to any of the families that are what they call legacies, rich families that have already sent their kids to those schools, okay? I didn't have any kind of insanely special quality for me to get in, right? I didn't know anyone. I wasn't in the in crowd of people who, oh, we got to get him in. And I wasn't a minority to hit their minority quotas, and I wasn't a sports star to hit their sports quotas. I was just a smart, normal kid. And that's not what Ivy League looks for. Ivy League does not want the smartest.
That's right. But Pig Roach didn't like work in high school. He doesn't like work now. He didn't like working at the same place that his father got him the job at because it was work. It was a 9 to 5. You have to put in work for everything you do to get ahead. You want a better house? Put in work. You want a better job? Put in work. Go to school. Get a degree. You want to earn something? You put in work. You want to not be a fat cow sitting on a couch snorting into a microphone and try to beg kids for money? You know what? You put in work. Go to the gym. Get yourself together. Get a good job. Take care of your family. Enjoy time with your friends. Get out and do something new. Try to push your limits. Do something different. Constantly improve.
Kids, they want to keep this conformist group of fucking people, right? These high echelon people, the Bushes, the people who go, just look at the people who go there and realize their family has gone there forever, because they're trying to keep this 1% in power, and they know that if you go to those schools, regardless if you're smart or dumb as fucking dirt, you could be the president of the United States. Just look at George W. Bush, the dumbest motherfucker I've ever met in my life, is a fucking idiot. And he was the president of the United States simply because he's in that family and he went to an Ivy League school. It's a joke. Okay?
I don't know about special qualities that you have, but I do know a bit about recruiting, because we here at the DIA do some recruiting every now and then. You don't need the run-of-the-mill, generic, book-smart Philip Burnell when you're trying to go ahead and fill your Ivy League quota, as he said. What you do need is an individual who can show you that they can learn extremely well, while at the same time looking to do extracurricular activities that put them on another level. Maybe he got denied because he wasn't playing sports. Maybe he got denied because, he didn't score well on SATs. That was never mentioned. Those are relatively important scores for when it comes to college placement. How about the other things? You didn't do volunteer work. You didn't do an internship. You didn't try to do anything outside the norm of some random kid who was just happened to be valedictorian in high school. You didn't show them how special you were. You didn't show them how exceptional you could be. You didn't show them potential. Now, this whole rant about the Bush family and George W. Bush, who probably had the hardest presidency that I can recall, had a national tragedy with 9/11. He had to deal with that on the fly. He wasn't the best at his speeches, but you could tell he was pretty genuine when he came to him. Now I see Bush in his later years come in, pass Michelle Obama a little piece of candy, and carry about his business. The man had his faults, yes. But that doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and talk trash about somebody who went through that kind of adversity in such a short amount of time. But continue, Mr. Pig Roach. What else do you have to say about your life?
So after years of me busting my ass, when I hit college, I said, fuck this shit. I'm so not busting my ass anymore. It's not worth it. And I realized it's all about who you know and if you're privileged or if you're not. And I knew no one and I wasn't privileged. So I went through college, just going through the motions to get through it. Originally I was going to do computer programming. That didn't work out. I went to Fairfield University, by the way.
Again, it comes down to his privilege. And now we're going to hear about his computer science and how he wanted to do it. And also, he will go into why he switched over to his business degree. So, let's continue with that. Oh, by the way, apparently high school, at the end of high school, was when our good buddy here, DSP, stopped working. Completely. He gave up at it. He rage quit work. Keep that in mind as we continue down this road. And as we go ahead and continue to watch the current saga of the Pig Roach.
Which I quickly found out was not the kind of people that I am. What I mean by that is almost 95% of the people who went to Fairfield University were rich. They all had tons of money. Their parents would pay for their cars, pay for everything, pay their whole fucking way. I was not. I was only there because I had a scholarship. It was the only way I could afford to go there. I still had to take out student loans because it wasn't a full scholarship. They didn't offer full scholarships.
Student loans? You had a scholarship and you took out student loans. Keep in mind this is 2014, guys. So, I guarantee you that the Pig Roach hasn't paid off his student loans yet. We know how bad he is with money. We know how bad he is about putting stuff just on a credit card and doing minimum payments. So that's part of his huge debt that most people forget about. Is that he put out some student loans. I wonder how much of that $17,161 that he wants to raise will go to student loan bills. Don't know. Maybe one day we'll find out.
And not to say that it was a bad school for business, it was actually quite a good school. But really at that point, after finding out that their computer science department was terrible because the teacher was awful, and me changing majors and going into business,
as you heard it, his teacher, his instructor, one instructor out of the whole computer science faculty was bad at their job, in his opinion. Now, I've had teachers I've disagreed with, but I still passed classes. It happens. Sometimes they're not the best teachers. But what you do is find what works together with them and what actually are they great at. And take that tool set, add it to your life toolbox. Maybe next time the next instructor will be better. And you'll still have the tools from the last one. Just kind of keep that in mind right now. And now we get into the Pig Roach work life. From high school into college. Go ahead, Mr. Pig Roach.
I was like, I will get as good grades as I can. And I don't care about getting straight A's anymore. This is a waste of my time. Primarily what I did while I went to college is I worked on the side. And so now let's start talking about my work life. All throughout high school and then into college, I had a job that I had at a local mall, and I like to joke about it. I used to say I pumped salad. I pumped salad. What the fuck? I tossed salad and pumped yogurt for a living, because I know how to laugh about myself.
You heard that. He tossed salad for a living. Huh. Let's continue.
I worked at a health food store, and there's frozen yogurt and custom-made salads. That's what we did there. I did that for almost 5 years.
You worked 5 years at, like, a salad bar for minimum wage. 5 years is a long time to work for minimum wage. Normally, it's a couple years, and you move on to another better-paying job. It's kind of how it's framed out. But, okay. Sure, Mr. Pig Roach. Continue your story.
Making minimum wage the whole time. And I used that to pay my way through different events. So my hobby was video games and Street Fighter. I used that to pay to go to tournaments, to pay to fly across the country, to B5, to pay to go to ECC and other events. So that was really the way that I financed my whole hobbies, was through working. And also I used that to pay my student loans off. And then when I was in college, I remember I wanted to do a slight upgrade during late college, so I quit that job. I eventually got a job at Circuit City, which doesn't exist anymore, but there used to be an electronics chain very similar to Best Buy, where, they had cameras, they had laptops, they had TVs, they had DVDs, music, CDs, stereo systems, they had a car department, all that stuff. And I actually worked at Circuit City for I believe it was about 2 years through college.
So you went from tossing salads to working at Circuit City. Good upgrade. You didn't have to exceptionally explain what Circuit City was. You said it was like Best Buy. End of statement there. Doesn't take that much to explain an electronics store. Like Fry's Electronics. They go ahead and have a little more in-depth of a store, to where you can actually buy your computer components right then and there. They'll even build a computer for you. Maybe that's what he should have looked into, instead of trying to get it from Chris, if I remember what his name was, way back when. Chris Felino? Furtado? Whatever. That we're saving for another exceptional story from the Pig Roach.
Until finally, at the end of college, when I graduated college, and I said, well, I have a degree in finance now. I fuck it all if I know what to do with it. Because when I went to start applying for jobs, it was, well, do you want to work an unpaid internship for a year? Like, well, how do I do that? I can't pay my bills. I can't pay off my student loans. I can't pay for anything if I have an unpaid internship. How do they expect me to be able to do it? So I couldn't do any of the internships. And the banks and the investment firms don't want to just hire someone with no experience. So I had no way to get any experience because I couldn't afford to have an unpaid internship, and no one would hire you otherwise. So I was out of luck. I had a degree that I could do nothing with. So eventually I ended up working for a company that I thought had to do with finance, and really it had nothing to do with it at all. It was Wells Fargo Financial.
So you didn't want to take an unpaid internship because you were concerned about how to pay off your bills, all of your student loans, and your debts from traveling and playing Street Fighter, which you just stated. Now, most smart people will go ahead and go, yeah, I'll take that unpaid internship, and then they'll go ahead and get a secondary job, one that's probably minimum wage, part-time hours, to try to stay afloat. Maybe they'll downsize what they're doing in life, live within their means. But we know you're too exceptional, too special of a person to have to work 2 jobs at once and not getting paid for one.
Which is just a mortgage company where you would give mortgages to people, small loans, unsecured credit cards. I worked there for about a year, only to find out that really the purpose of that business was to be a predatory lender and to actually lend only to people with low credit. So really what we would do is we would find people with low credit scores who were desperate. We would give them loans on their houses that were extremely high value on their house, put in all their debt, and then next thing you know, the market fell out and everyone's houses got foreclosed on because they couldn't afford to pay the payments and they had no equity in their house anymore. That's literally what the business was. So after a year of being there and me having major disagreements with the manager because he just did not like me, I ended up leaving that.
That being said, apparently you know how mortgages work. Apparently you know the ins and outs of that financial sector for that 1 year that you worked there. So how do you know so little right now about how everything works when you're about to lose your house here on the 15th? Obviously you know what's going on when it comes to your financial issues. You knew that you caused it all. You caused all of your debt, Mr. Pig Roach. And you're stating right here that you knew the practices of that day and the practices of that sector. Let's see if you'll shed some more light onto this subject.
Job. That was incidentally the year that ties into last year's story about Evo 2005, because that was the year that I did Evo 2005 after leaving that job, but before I went on to my next one. My next job was working as a business associate or business team specialist at Best Buy. And what my job was supposed to be was that I would learn about networking and I would learn about PCs, which I already knew about. As I told you guys, I used to build PCs, I used to do networking, I used to do all that stuff. But I was supposed to have the resources. If someone came in and said, I'm setting up my own small business and I need computers in there and I need point of sale systems and all that, I was supposed to be able to sell them all that stuff.
So there it is. A tad bit of gold dust for you. That's right. DSP was part of the master race. He used to build PCs. He knows the components. He understands it. But then the laptop he's using currently is a pile of crap. And it doesn't work right. But he won't upgrade it. Same with his other PC in the closet. Or the one that he currently plays games on now. See? He trips himself up with the things he said in the past. They come back to haunt him in the future. When people like me find it and bring it back up. He states that he never said anything like that. At least I've heard him before say, "Oh, I never said that I built PCs. I never said anything like that." Right there, Mr. Pig Roach, is you, in 2014, saying that you built PCs.
It never came to fruition because about 6 months into the program, they dumped all the resources. The company said they didn't want to do it anymore, and they realized they had hired these people. They were paying us a lot of money, and we really didn't have anything to fucking do. They literally had us covering the floor being normal sales associates because they canceled the program after 6 months. Our boss, who was our manager, got fired. The district guy who was supposed to be in charge of the program almost never even came by the store anymore. And eventually he was transitioned out. And then after a year working at Best Buy, they wanted to get rid of everyone in the business team because we were getting paid too much money. And they eventually framed me. Yes, they abused the store discount policy by saving $1.20 on buying 3 PlayStation 2s, which I used in a video game tournament. And they fired me for it.
What was that? Best Buy framed you? Why they were letting go the entire business team, which you just stated? The manager got moved away. Your direct manager got let go. This is what happens when something fails. You downsize those assets. Now, for them to fire you over $1.20 savings because you were abusing it somehow, it sounds silly. It doesn't add up either. Your normal employee discounts are either probably 10%, maybe 15%, and you just stated you bought 3 PlayStations? What? For a tournament? That doesn't make any sense. And how you saved $1.20 altogether. It probably mean $120. And you probably rapidly bought those. And it probably wasn't the first time where you dropped in to buy stuff for other people using your discount. That's why people get fired for that. Maybe your friends back then said, hey, I need a PS3 so I can practice with you during some Street Fighter. Can you help a brother out? Pick that up on discount. With that store credit you get. That's why you were let go then. You were fired because you abused the system. Just like Blip TV let you go because you were being a racist asshole. Strange how it's never his fault. Odd. It continues to this day. Especially during his gameplays. I was blocking. There was nothing I could do. This is 2014, remember. And he's still trying to pass the blame and play the victim. Continue, Mr. Pig Roach. Carry on.
Which I appealed, and I won the appeal. I got a massive amount of unemployment money out of them, and made them look like a bunch of jackasses.
You got unemployment money. That was it. If you wrongfully got terminated, that's another story. You could have had a civil lawsuit against them. Took them to court. For quite a bit of money, probably. But no. You got your unemployment check because you got fired. You didn't get any extra money from that. You might have appealed it to your direct manager there. But he told you no. Kicked you out. And there was your unemployment check waiting. I got a lot of money from it. Ha ha ha. Lean over, take a sip of water. Move on. Because you know that you were lying about that, Mr. Pig Roach. Straight up lying. But continue. I'm sure you have a little bit more to tell us.
So, some crazy stuff I've been through in my life, right? So then, to give you some perspective on how this has worked, I lived with my parents my whole life, up until I got that job at Wells Fargo Financial. During that period of time, I moved out of my parents' house, and I actually got a 3-bedroom apartment, which I shared with 2 roommates who were other employees of Wells Fargo Financial at the time, and that was up in New Haven, Connecticut, okay? I had that apartment for a year. Unfortunately, one of the roommates wasn't very reliable, and he wanted to move out, and we were going to get stuck with an apartment, with an extra apartment, and at that point, I stopped working at that job.
So you went above your means and got an apartment with 2 other people that you worked with. And one of them wanted to move out. You play the victim yet again. The person probably either didn't like your habits. Maybe the snorting, burping, and farting just wasn't for them. Maybe they saw the writing on the wall. Knew you were probably going to get fired. And that you're starting to do the whole thing with Best Buy. He knew probably that he had to fork out more money, if he wasn't already, to go ahead and make ends meet. And he got out of a bad situation. Now, as far as you going back to your parents' house after moving out, it happens. It happened to me. It's not a big deal. people try to get their own, space early on in life. Heck, I moved out when I was like 19. It was time. I thought I had everything going for me. Company I was working for laid me off. My roommate and I couldn't kind of make those ends meet anymore. So we did what was best. We didn't sign another lease with them. We said, hey, it's time. We gotta go. Moved back to my parents' house. Big deal. So what? Why does that make you special? Because you moved out. Soared on your own. And it came crashing down. No, it didn't. You're fine. You were fine. You just made a couple learning mistakes. But that means that you learn from mistakes. And obviously you don't. But continue.
I lost that job and started working at Best Buy. But what I found out working at Best Buy is that even with the amount of money they were paying me, I wasn't making a hell of a lot of money, and I really couldn't afford to have this apartment. In addition, because I had to leave that other job, and as I told you, to go to Evo 2005, I had racked up my credit card bills like sky high. I owed a ton of credit card debt, and I really couldn't afford the apartment anymore. So I ended up, when I got the Best Buy job, moving back out from New Haven, back in with my parents. So how many people in life can say that they moved out of their parents' house, they felt like they were going to be successful on their own, things didn't work out, and they had to move back into their parents' house? That's literally what happened to me. Then I ended up finally getting a job after the Best Buy debacle at a place called Helicopter Support Incorporated. This was also in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Actually, I take that back. I think Helicopter Support was just over the Trumbull line. So they were considered Trumbull, not Bridgeport. Okay? And this job was so different than anything I'd done. Customer service. So you're the face of the company to the customer. Customers would come to me and say, Phil, I have a helicopter and I operate it myself, but this particular part broke. My mechanic told me this part broke. What can you do for me? And I would go out there and look, do any companies have the part available? Do we maybe have the part available? Because we had a huge inventory of helicopter parts in our inventory. If it was a really expensive part, like a helicopter blade, that costs so much money to make that no one wants to buy a new one, we had an actual shop where people worked on helicopter parts and blades and stuff like that, where we would talk to them, gee, do you have a refurb? Do you have something available that we could get this customer right away as a more inexpensive way to get them flying again? And that was my job. I was basically the go-between between customers and our company, finding parts for people and getting those parts out to the operators. What ended up happening was that 3 years into me being at this job, which I got nothing but great ratings, promotions, all kinds of great stuff, the economy turned. And when the economy turned, unfortunately, what ended up happening was that the company had record increase. I'm doing it the wrong direction. I was doing it the right direction. Record increase sales, and then it plateaued, and then it went because no one could afford to operate a helicopter anymore because the economy had turned in the United States. So this company that at one point when I started working there was prosperous, record year, after 3 years of me being there started to tank. Unfortunately, during that period of time, I decided to buy this condo. So finally, after moving back in with my parents for like 3 years, I moved back out again and moved into this condo into the summer of 2009. And as you guys know, it was during that period of time that I started doing YouTube as a hobby. I also hurt my back, or didn't really hurt it, but I found out about the severely herniated disc in my lower back and found out that I couldn't do physical stuff anymore, like play football or anything like that. So I ended up doing a lot more less physical activities like gaming a hell of a lot more. So I buy this place in 2009 and, start doing my thing with YouTube and everything in it. In fact, I still remember when I had the office job, when Batman Arkham Asylum came out, I actually took the day off of work. I took 2 days, actually, off of work just to play Batman Arkham Asylum because I knew it was going to be great. And you know what? I don't regret it at all. Even though they were my vacation days and I used them to play games, it was worth it. That game was great. The playthrough did well. You know what I mean? It was that kind of stuff that got me notoriety on YouTube back then. So, my hobby is booming, everything at work is going well. People are saying I'm getting all these great evaluations, everything saying you're doing great, above and beyond. In fact, at this point, they started grooming me at this job around 2009 to be a lead in continuous improvement. And what that means is that they have this program.
So you have a background in continuous improvement. A manufacturing idea brought up by Ford that got pushed by Toyota now. They are the leading experts on continuous improvement. People go there to Toyota of Japan to get training on how to make your manufacturing better using their methods. So obviously you do know about how continuous improvement works. And it can be applied to anything. It can be applied to your YouTube channel. It can be applied to your own workplace, your own home, your own image, your own body. You just have to follow this little 5 steps that they got going on. That 5S, if you know what I'm talking about. But let's hear more about this continuous improvement position of yours, Mr. Pig Roach.
Where they were teaching people to become not these employees of customer support anymore, but to be advanced in the business. What you would do, you would look at a process. So let's say the repair process to repair a part at the company, and you would say what's step 1, step 2, step 3, all the way till the end of the process of where maybe the part comes into the building to when it leaves the building and goes to the customer. You would map out the process. You would time each step. You would find out at what points do we have problems in our process, right? When do we have problems, and we mark them off. And it was your job to eliminate those problems or cut them down or revamp the process to save time and money. And I became trained to do this. I actually have a certification on the wall in my bedroom, ACE, Achieving Competitive Excellence, where I became considered an associate. It's the first major level of achievement in training for it. I ran events. I was in charge of completely redesigning the repairs process in our building from start to finish, and I did it. I mapped it out. I did this whole thing. No one else did stuff like this. I was the only person who was doing stuff like this because they trusted me to do it.
Let's stop there. Your role as a constant improvement supervisor is to make sure that you can improve every aspect of that company. Not only the repair line. You need to make sure the customer service line is going well, that they have the tools needed to make sure that everything goes perfectly. You need to make sure that shipping is taken care of, that your own costs are taken care of, and you need to map it out. You need to map out even parts that fall off your repair line and get broken. You need to map that out too. It's a deep dive kind of job. Because what they're looking for is somebody who can improve their company across everything. So instead of staying afloat and having no downturn, the economic downturn for that company at that time was partially your fault then. So, what happened next, Mr. Pig Roach?
So I revamped the whole process. We revamped the whole computer system and all this, right? So all this was happening between 2009 2010 as I was paired with doing my YouTube hobby here at home. And then all of a sudden in the middle of 2010, basically here's what happened. Like I said, all of a sudden they started pissing money away. They were making no money anymore, this company, because the economy turned. They decided they were going to do a reorganization of the company. Let me tell you something. If you work for a company that's doing a reorganization, you're up shit's creek. Because what that means is that they are failing and they need to reorganize and screw people over and kick people out and do stuff real nasty to keep the company afloat. And what happened in this case, they did a reorg where they took me out of this department where I was doing all this great work and they put me in a completely different department. And the management there didn't know who I was, didn't know about my skill set, didn't care about ACE at all. They literally didn't care for the fact that I had done all this above and beyond work, had gotten recommendations and achievement awards and everything. The management there didn't give a fuck about me.
Why should have that manager cared about your prior credentials? There's no point. You're not the constant improvement individual anymore. The company shifted your role because you were not completing the task, or that they were getting rid of their constant improvement team for the time being. And for you to go ahead and get laid off in 3 months meant that you were not doing your job.
And after 3 months, they laid me off. And it was like, wow, what a fail. What a fail by that company. And by the way, that company is now going out of business. They are in the process of going out of business. They're laid off probably about 50 to 75% of their workforce. And it's looking like they're going to go completely out of business. Or what they'll do, they won't go out of business, but they'll just have the entire workforce outsourced to some third world country where everyone gets paid $1 an hour. And that's where that will exist from now on. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic what a failure that company turned out to be. But I digress.
Even if the company failed, how was it their fault for laying you off? I've been part of companies that were going under. Yeah, they lay people off. It happens. They liquidize their assets. They move everything. They try to either get out and not come back to that sector, or maybe sell their business to somebody who can take care of it. Get bought out by somebody bigger. And that was the same job your father worked at, if I'm not mistaken. So you're calling the place your father made his career at a sham and just a terrible place and good riddance? Way to go, buddy.
So what ended up happening, I get laid off in 2010, and me, living here for only a year, and really having nothing to fall back on, because like I said, I was blindsided at the time. It was like I had all these great recommendations and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden they just laid me off. It was like, what do I do now? The industry had tanked. Remember, the industry had tanked when the economy turned. There was no available positions anywhere in Connecticut or anywhere in this area, for that matter, to do similar work. I could have started from the bottom, but how do I pay for my condo, right, when I'm getting a minimum wage job? Even working 2-3 minimum wage jobs, there's no way I would have been able to afford this place anymore. And I said, I have to do something. I'm in dire straits. And at that point, in late 2010, I said, I'm just going to try to make a run for it. Let's make YouTube my full-time thing, and let's see if we can make it work. And even
there it is again. The snippet of truth in all of our trolling videos and our conversations with other detractors. There's a little bit of truth to it. Why even say that? You're telling your own fan base that you're lying, and you still do this to this day. There's a snippet of truth in that little thing. So, it didn't happen, but a little bit of it's true. This video has been fantastic. Let's continue.
Then, it hasn't been easy. There's been lots of ups and downs. I would say, that was a low, and then all of a sudden, the surge of popularity and support I got from YouTube was a high. Being signed by Machinima was a high. And then all of a sudden, I had a decline in 2012 where people were like, I was getting too stagnant. I needed to adjust. I wasn't, using the newest equipment or anything anymore. And there was a low. And then, of course, at the end of that year when I took a big pay cut, boom, that was a low. And then I'd say last year it was kind of going up again, reinvigoration. I went through direct capture, and live streaming, and that was a great thing for me. And now, of course, again, they're going on down again, because now you've got the bullshit of everyone on the internet thinks that I'm Satan or something, because it's a bunch of little immature kids who hate me and want to make hate montages about me. And even though there may be the 1% of the people who are actually doing that who have a snippet of truth.
There it is again. The snippet of truth in all of our trolling videos, in our conversations with other detractors. There's a little bit of truth to it. Why even say that? You're telling your own fan base that you're lying, and you still do this to this day. There's a snippet of truth in that little thing. So, it didn't happen, but a little bit of it's true. This video has been fantastic. Let's continue.
The fact that that's their whole goal, and they don't see the fact that they're hurting me by doing that negative shit, right? That they're not teaching me a lesson that's not improving my product. No, they're actually hurting me as a person by doing that negative shit. But they don't understand that because they're not mature adults, right? They don't have the ability to look in other people's shoes, right? Walk in other people's shoes and see from another perspective. And that's why they do negative, nasty shit like that, thinking that, oh, it's funny and it's good. It's not. And if you live your life like that, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just going to be a negative person your whole fucking life, and you're never going to enjoy anything, okay? But anyway, I digress.
I'm a negative person. You're a negative person. Every detractor is a negative person. And we're mentally ill, as you've heard before. I don't enjoy the life I've built, apparently. And I allegedly don't enjoy my work life, because I have to sit here and tell people about a almost 37-year-old man and his 11-year-old legacy. I don't have to dredge up this silly nonsense that you've said many years ago. 5, actually. Because it's just looped again. There'll be other detractors after me, after the Almighty One, after LSB. There'll be another generation of people who want to make content on DarksydePhil. Maybe they'll make it better, more entertaining, unlike you, Mr. Pig Roach. You keep talking down to detractors all the time. You block people on your Twitter, growing the numbers of the Gentleman's Club. You block people in your chat if they ask you a question about something from the past. Like the other day, when somebody brought up Project 7, and that people didn't get paid correctly for it. And you went on a rant and made that person get timed out for the day with the lean-in manual ban. Why couldn't you just answer the question? Things went sour and Project 7 didn't work out. I took the money and I bought a BMW, and I didn't give anything to the people helping me. Oh, and then I didn't do proper maintenance with the BMW, and I had to go buy another one. Stupid BMW. Stupid buggy car mechanics. Yeah, I went there. You're welcome.
That's where I am now. And you know what? Now, here I am in my life. I'm about to leave Connecticut, and I'm going to go to the West Coast, and it's probably, hopefully, going to be a basic positive thing. We'll go back up on the roller coaster ride of life, right? This is how my life's been. Ups and downs, and it never seems to just level out. You get high highs and low lows, and The one thing, though, that I have to say, the one thing that I have to say about life, and I hope that a lot of you who are watching this, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, you take this to heart, because I found this to be a tenet that's been true. No matter what happens, okay, if you maintain the course, if you stay positive, and if you don't panic, I know that's a Doug Adams line from his freaking books, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's one of the best pieces of advice anyone's ever given me in my life. Because if you don't panic, things find a way of working themselves out in the end.
Don't panic and put out an emergency vlogging video about how much money you need to raise to save your house from the taxes. Don't panic and put out a twit longer about something that happened because of your inability to clean up your own mess. Don't panic when the detractors find out that you were lying about your girlfriend leaving you months ago. Don't panic when people start talking about you hiring an escort. Because guess what? That was wrong. And we made a big deal about it. You state that you don't panic. Yet every single time something goes wrong, you panic. And you say don't give up. I saw you almost give up playing a video game. And you rage quit and play video games and leave them to die because you got mad at the game. Look at Dark Souls. You gave up until somebody held your hand and made things better. Those must be those good people out there you were talking about. Strange how your life advice about your ups and downs seems to ring true to this day, 5 years later. You talk about having ups and downs, but you're just staying flat across the board every day. And now you're trending down. You're trending down because your refusal to adapt and change yet again. That's why it took you so long to go to direct capture instead of the handy cam on your coffee table. Somehow your pig roach luck is keeping you afloat. But I don't know yet how the ending of this year's tax saga is going to play out. Because as we know, he's going on a vacation to see his parents in Connecticut for about a week. 5 days and some travel time or something along those lines. It hasn't really been too clear because he's trying to make sure that it's vague. Until he slips up on Instagram and sends a picture for some exceptional detective to take a look at and decipher out actually where he's at. So let's wait and see how this whole Connecticut trip pays off. He comes back a day before his taxes are due. Are you sure you really want to stream on the day that your taxes are due, Mr. Pig Roach? We've seen you dodge things like that before by claiming that it was your day off. We'll see how that chapter ends here shortly. And I'm sure it will be truly something special to see.
Okay? They just do. There are times in my life when I lost my job, or I got laid off, got fired, in massive debt, can barely even pay my bills. If you just stay the course, things will find a way of working themselves out. At least in my life, that's the experience I've had. And I hope that people don't... I think it's really people, unfortunately, lose faith. They lose faith that things are not going to get better. They lose faith that if they just hang in there, that, you know what I mean, that things eventually will. And you know what? I am right in there understanding with those people, because there have been some times in my life that I was in the fucking dumps for months on end. I didn't know when the next positive thing in my life was possibly ever going to come, if it ever would, if things would ever get better. And I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was barely able to live where I was living. And, you know, things were uncertain, and I hated my job, and I hated my life, and I hated everything. But, you know, and I even had crazy, you know, everyone has them in the back of their head, crazy thoughts about, you know, things that, you know, you shouldn't even be spoken of. Let's put it that way. They should not even be spoken of, because everyone knows you have your little demons, right? But that's your own thing. And if you can just get through that, and you can stay the course and realize that if you can be strong, a strong individual, that you can get through it, and you can get past the nasty shit, and there will be a light eventually coming at the end of the tunnel. It might not be the last light, because then you might go down on your next roller coaster ride, right? Because that's how it's been for me, up and down. But you have to hang in there. You know what I mean? I'm really trying to give you some really good heartfelt advice from my personal experiences, because I've seen people that they get to that point where they're low and they can't get out of it, and they're just so stuck, and then they give up. And that's the worst thing you could ever do in your life, is to just throw in the towel and say, I give up. I'm never going to try to have this life be improved for myself. It's never going to get better. You'll lose yourself. You will lose yourself as a person, and you can't do that. On the road of life, you've got to maintain the course. You've got to stay positive, and don't fucking panic and lose it, because things will work out. There are good people on this planet. I know that you may not believe it, especially if you're in a dark part of your life right now. There are good people on the planet Earth who care about others, who will help you, okay? Whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends, whether it's a stranger on the street who's a good Samaritan, there are good-natured, good-hearted people. And you may not find them on the fucking internet, on YouTube or Twitch. You may find the most nasty, negative elements there, okay? But out of those 5 million assholes, there's one nice person who matters and who cares about you. And those are the things you have to focus on in life. And don't get derailed, and don't get sidetracked, and don't get focused on the negative. Things will get better if you hang in there and you don't panic. Okay? Alright. Well, if anything, all these years that I've done stuff on the internet, I at least hope that every once in a while, when I try to give you a snippet of wisdom, that it helps you in your life. Because really, I didn't have anyone in my life, quite honestly, I'll be honest with you all, besides maybe every once in a while a little thing here or there from my parents. I didn't have anyone in my life who was guiding me or who was helping me, and I had to find a lot of this shit out by myself. And there were a lot of dark times. I mean, I'm speaking from the heart here. There were a lot of dark times in my life where it was like I did not see the light, you know. But now, being that I've come out of that shit, and I am in a better place, you know, I can say there is light. There is positivity and light and goodness, and you just got to hang in there to get to it. Don't panic, and you'll get there, okay? All right, I guess that's it for this segment. Let's take a short break. And now people are saying that I'm the new Bo Dallas. Oh. All right, yes. Take a short break. Take some time to Bo leave. We'll be right back. If you're watching this on Twitch, stand by for a short commercial break. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can use the timestamp to jump to the next portion. We're going to have about 15 to 20 minutes of live callers coming up right after the break. I'll be right back.
Well, that ends his life story, according to the Pig Roach. I hope you got a little more information that you were seeking. I hope people enjoyed this video for the slight bit of gold dust that I was able to dig out. I'm sure that during his trip over to Connecticut, I might go back in time again, for when him and Panda Lee were doing their Connecticut bucket list. I think that might be a little interesting thing to look up. Thank you for joining me here, again, for another episode of the Pig Roach Files. Your continued support helps this channel grow. Your interaction with me here in the comment section, liking the videos, and sharing them, as well as subscribing, helps the DIA grow. Sorry that last week didn't plan out. I had some internet issues and just couldn't get it up and running in time. I have to get up early to go to work, and that's the priority. So, if you haven't seen it, last week's episode was put up yesterday. And it talks about his My Taxes marathon that he had. Check it out if you haven't. I also put up the newest episode of the Gentleman's Club featuring Robin and Zephyr, where we sat down on St. Patty's Day and had a good chuckle about the pig roach. We'll be looking for another guest here for the Gentleman's Club, and I have a certain individual in mind that I'd like to talk to. He can be a little controversial at times and say some pretty shenanigan stuff every now and then, but I consider him a good friend. So if you're out there, Jackal, and you hear this before I go over there and tweet at you, I want you to be on the Gentleman's Club next time. Because I want to sit down with a good friend and laugh about this Connecticut trip. I think it would be quite a bit of fun to come over with you. So, have a nice day, guys. Enjoy that Sunday. Enjoy the rest. Take a mental break from the pig roach if you need to during his vacation. It's highly recommended. And be safe out there. And we'll see you next time on another episode of the Pig Roach Files.